afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming along to this final session of the day. I might be biased, but I think we have saved the best for last. Certainly one of the most important topics for last. So I'm an ethics fellow in the public policy program at the Alan Turing Institute, and a big focus of my work is around AI and children. Children are the group that is perhaps going to be the most impacted by AI over the course of their lifetimes. Today's children are interacting with AI on a daily basis, from everything from smart toys through to smart devices in the home, smart devices that have been designed and developed not with children in mind, but are increasingly being used by children on a daily basis. Children are interacting with AI in education, in systems that personalize their learning and shape the way that they're learning in education settings, and then in much less visible ways, where AI is making decisions that impact children's lives through systems being used across education, healthcare, housing, social care, all key areas that really shape and impact children's lives. So while children are increasingly being impacted by AI across all aspects of their lives, they're simultaneously the group that are least represented in decision-making about the ways that AI systems are designed, developed, and deployed, and also in policy-making and regulatory discussions around AI. So our team at the Turing Institute are on a mission to change that. We're on a mission to bring children's voices and children's experiences into decision-making about shaping the future of AI. And I'm really excited that we're joined today by a panel who share that mission and are joining us in that mission to advance child-centered AI. So on the panel today, we have Sian Cooke, Head of Emerging Technology at the Department for Education. We have Gregory Metcalfe, Project Lead at the Children's Parliament. Steph, Wright, Head of Scottish AI Alliance. And joining us remotely from South Africa, Stephen Vosloo, Digital Foresight and Policy Specialist at UNICEF. And Stephen, I'm not sure if you can see the fabulous background that you have, but it is quite something. Unfortunately, we don't have video, but we do have audio from Stephen. But you might be wondering, this session is called What Can Children Teach Us About AI? And you might have noticed that none of our panelists are, in fact, a child, which is a bit of a problem when we want to be learning from children. But fortunately, there are many children who have been involved in putting this panel together today and shaping the questions and shaping the discussion that we're going to be having today. The children you can see on the screen here are some of the children that we've been engaging with in the collaboration between the Turing, Scottish AI Alliance and Children's Parliament, working with children across Scotland to explore how children feel about AI and how they want to be involved in shaping the future of AI. So my job today is quite easy. I've not come up with the questions for this session. The questions from this session are actually coming from some of these children. And so I want to introduce to you perhaps the three most important panelists in this session, and that is Paul, Calvin, and Macy.
Hello, I'm Paul.
Hello, I'm Calvin.
And I'm Macy, and we are the investigators from Glasgow.
Yeah, our class have been learning about AI in schools.
And our class has some questions for you today.
So Paul, Calvin, and Macy have questions for the panel. I know it's maybe making a little bit nervous to see what the children have to ask. We're going to start with the first question from Paul, and it's a question to all of you.
Do you enjoy your job?
Which I think we all agree is a really, really important core question to ask. So I'm going to come to each of you and perhaps say a little bit about what your role is, and then to Paul's question, do you enjoy your job, and perhaps why do you enjoy your job? So Sian, can I come to you first?
Yeah, hi everybody, and thanks so much. It's such a pleasure to be here. I honestly think I've got the best job in government. I'm working on a really fast-paced, super interesting policy area that's going to have a massive impact on how we all think about learning over the next 100 years. I don't know. What an amazing opportunity to be leading a brilliant team with loads of political energy, loads of time to think about really knotty problems. So yeah, I love my job.
Gregory.
So I work for Children's Parliament, which is a children's human rights charity in Scotland, and I've been there a couple of years. And I'm leading the project Exploring Children's Rights and AI, which is just like extremely eye-opening field to be in. And I love the fact that I get to work with these kids. So those three up there I worked with quite closely over the last couple of years, and their classmates and the children from 3 other schools across Scotland, which is, yeah, wonderful.
And Steph, tell us about your job and do you enjoy your job?
Hi, I'm Steph. I'm the head of the Scottish AI Alliance, which is the delivery body for Scotland's national AI strategy. The strategy outlines a vision for Scotland to be a leader in trustworthy, ethical and inclusive AI. And one of the best things is about leading a team who all completely align and subscribe to that vision. I absolutely enjoy my job. I get to meet fantastic people like all you here. And there's never a dull day, and we get to take on really amazing projects like this to ensure that everyone has a voice in our AI future.
And Stephen, we can now see you, which is brilliant. So Stephen, can I pose Paul's question to you and say a little bit about what your role is and you enjoy
Can
your
you hear
job?
me? I'm sorry, really sorry about this. I'm sorry, I can't hear you guys at all. Yeah, sorry. Please, maybe we can try fix it. Mary, if you can hear me now, please maybe carry on.
Okay. Well, we can hear and see Stephen. Hopefully this is going to get worked out. We'll come back to Stephen perhaps on the next question. Hopefully we can reconnect. But I wanted to say a little bit more about the project that we've been doing with the Turing in collaboration with the Children's Parliament and Scottish AI Alliance, which is engaging children across Scotland. But as I say, we really want this session to be centering the children's voices. So rather than me telling you about this project, I'm going to hand it back over to the children to say a little bit more about the work that we've been doing in this space.
Since September 2022, members of Children's Parliament from across Scotland have been exploring children's rights and artificial intelligence with the Alan Turing Institute.
We have been learning about AI and thinking about what needs to happen for AI to play a role in keeping all children healthy, happy and safe.
There have been over 100 children from across Scotland involved, from Glasgow to Shetland, Edinburgh to Stirling.
One class from each school has formed the AI team. They've been doing a mission each month. There has also been a team of 13 investigators, 3 or 4 from each school, who have been meeting online with Children's Parliament and the Alan Turing Institute to complete investigations and talk about the ideas from the other children.
This is the start of a really exciting project. It is the first time children have been involved with shaping the future of AI in Scotland.
That was a clip from the video that Children's Parliament produced at the end of the first phase of this project of work. And this is an ongoing project. We're excited that the second phase video will be coming out very shortly and will be previewed at the Scottish AI Summit next week. So Steph, I'm going to come to you in a moment to ask a bit more about the way that this work is feeding into the work of the Scottish AI Alliance and Scotland's AI strategy. But on that note, we have a question for you from Macy. Oh, we've lost the audio.
Are people's feelings about AI taking into account?
So Steph, in thinking about the work of Scottish AI Alliance and Scotland's AI strategy, are people, or perhaps specifically our children's feelings, being taken into account?
Well, I think in general, no, so far, I think, and not enough. And that's something we're very committed to changing through projects like this and commitments in what we plan to do over the next 2 years, where we are committed to developing participatory mechanisms for people to have an active voice in our and how AI is deployed in Scotland. But I don't think people's feelings are really considered so far. The narrative on AI is very much focused on technology, and it really needs to shift to people, because ultimately it is people who develop it, people who make decisions to deploy it, and people it impacts. Once you actually shift the way you talk about AI to that, then I think the great work can begin. But the answer to Maisie is no, not enough, but we hope to do something about that.
That's right, thank you. Stephen, I wonder if you can hear us now. Can you hear us, Stephen? perhaps not. We'll continue to keep trying. But Sian, I'm going to come to you now. We have a question for you from Calvin, and this relates specifically to the uses of AI within education.
How can we improve AI in school?
I think that's a great question. Like, AI is not new in school. It's been in school for a long time, and depending on how you define AI, we've been thinking about like algorithmic learning for a really, really long time. But I think that there are a huge number of opportunities around using artificial intelligence to improve how teachers work and how children learn, and there are also risks that we need to manage. So we're thinking a lot about children's safety, around data protection, intellectual property, loads of the themes that have been coming up over the course of this conversation, I'm sure, but also thinking about how we make access to technology and to artificial intelligence technologies in particular equitable, so that everybody can experiment, can learn, can reap those benefits in a safe and sensible way. Yeah.
That's definitely...
We have unfortunately lost the Cooke, so just...
Okay. Sadly, Stephen is... sadly, we have lost Stephen, which is indeed a great loss to our discussions. But yeah, we will continue, and hopefully Stephen can watch along afterwards. So Gregory, on the topic of education, I have another question from Calvin, which is more, I suppose, not so much about uses of AI within education, but education about AI. But I'll hand it to you.
Why should AI be taught in school?
Thanks, Calvin. That's such a right and juicy question. It's something across the course of this project, we started by going to schools and talking to the children about AI and trying to uncover what they knew already. The baseline of knowledge, I think, was kind of similar to the baseline of knowledge in adults, in that there was patchworks of information. There was, they understood about its application in certain contexts. They didn't necessarily understand how it works. They didn't necessarily kind of understand the data involved. And more importantly, they didn't really have the critical awareness to unpick some of the issues around it. So what we did, and what Children's Parliament always do, is started with an understanding of children's human rights, because we find that if you equip children with a knowledge of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, that empowers them to claim their rights, to claim their right to participate, to have a say in matters that affect them, to claim their right to education, to claim their right to information. So all of that means that once you've kind of got that instilled, got that baseline there, then you start tackling the subject. And in this case, I think there's a temptation when we're talking about tech and talking about AI in particular to think it's too complicated for children. That's just laziness, in my view. Children are very capable. Children, if you give them that knowledge, they are also very opinionated. And that's something we really discovered, that once the children understood the issue, they had a lot to say, and they had insights that we as adults do not have, because we are not children. I think that's something we forget as well, is that children have lived experience of childhood, and that even if we can remember what it was like to be children, and I think in a lot of cases we can't really, what it is to be a child now is not the same as it was to be a child 10, 20, 30 years ago. So their insights are incredibly important. I've veered violently off the question, I think. Why should children learn about AI? It's to do with their lives now. They are impacted, as Mhairi said in the introduction. Growing up in a world where AI is increasingly dominant means that they need to understand that, and they need to understand their part in it, and they need to be able to advocate for themselves. But I think equally important is the education of adults in AI and also in children's rights, in order for adults to be able to stand alongside children and to support them and to give them the platform to speak and to share their insights.
Yeah, absolutely. Sian, I wonder if I could come back to you, and I guess picking up on that point of the two sides of how AI relates to education. It's both about AI in education, but also education about AI. And I wonder if you could say a bit more about Department of Education's approach or thinking around the role of AI in education and education about AI.
Yeah, so I suppose I could start with what we've heard when we've spoken to people at the front line. So We ran a project over the summer where we held a big call for evidence and had over 570 educators write back to us and talk to us about how they were using AI and how they were experimenting with AI. Clearly, the teacher has such a critical role in the classroom, and they're the greatest asset that we have in our education system. So thinking about, in particular, generative AI and how that can help teachers to manage their workloads, to think creatively, to spend their time doing the things that only they can do and that they do best, rather than spending all of their time doing administrative tasks or things that could easily be automated without losing any value in the classroom, came through really, really strongly. Like there's a really active early adopter community of educators who are thinking about how you can use this technology. And that's both for the stuff that they're doing kind of behind closed doors or at home when they're planning their lessons or running administration of their schools or colleges, but also how they're starting to use it in the classroom and to have conversations with children and young people about what this means and to think about lots of the risks around plagiarism and academic integrity and what that means for the kind of future of learning is a really interesting question that it's great to see educators beginning to engage with. So there's a whole range of issues that are spread kind of across all the different policy remits across our department that are having to grapple with this question of really disruptive technology and how it challenges us to think differently. And then in terms of active education about artificial intelligence, we in England, I can only speak for England because education is a devolved policy area, although we have very good friends in the Scottish and Welsh and Northern Irish governments who we catch up with very regularly. Our national curriculum is set and we have a policy commitment not to change it in this parliament, but there is content in the computing curriculum that provides the kind of foundational knowledge that people can build on to think about AI, but it's moving really, really quickly. And it's an area that we're kind of acutely aware that we need to think about what is the right content for people to be learning in the pace of such rapid change in the technology environment that children are growing up in.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've certainly seen a lot of excitement, but also concern around the ways that generative AI might be used in education, and clearly the importance of engaging children, but also teachers, to equip them with the understandings and skills to make decisions about how AI might be used in the classroom. I want to bring it back to the ways that we engage children and involve children in shaping the future of AI. And I have another clip from the children, which is from their perspective, why it's so important to involve children in these discussions, and why it's important that children learn about and have a chance to be included in discussions about shaping the future of AI. So I will hand back to the children.
And it wouldn't be fair, because if a kid who's teenage is another kid and didn't know about AI, and then that kid started saying things about these things, and they're like, I want to know this, and then they're like, no, you can't, because I had some special people to come over here and teach me, and you aren't.
Because people have to spread the word about AI.
Because everyone has the right to fairness and the same,
and has the right to their choice and opinion on how they can use it.
Then children would make up ideas. And they could be really helpful. Yeah. And when they're older, then they'd be able to work for AI to let other children know about AI. Yeah.
you do something that you think is right, but you haven't been told that, you don't know that, because the parents are trying to be positive about how AI works, so we don't get really worried or anything. But if they weren't to teach us the bad things,
then what would we expect?
there's going to be a bigger impact on what happens to us when we use AI.
Yeah,
because we wouldn't use anything else.
Because, what are we supposed to expect if they say the good things? But if they...
And then we use it, and then it does all the bad things.
Yeah.
And then you're like,
and we're
what? This is not my parents. This is not what my parents
what
say.
am I supposed to do or something?
Yeah.
The parent would most likely have a say, because the parent would think, oh, let me just have a say because my child's just young, she or he doesn't know what's happening and all that, blah, blah, blah. But really, the children don't really get a say, but it's really, but sometimes.
So, do you think children should have a say?
Yes.
Why?
To evolve their future and make sure nothing's going to bad happen.
And like make the future better and everyone's future better for everyone.
And I think those children put it so well and really clearly express the range of different reasons and rationales for engaging children around AI, partly so that children understand how they're already impacting with AI and are able to make informed choices, but perhaps more importantly, so that children can be involved in shaping the future of AI and making sure that we develop AI that maximizes the benefits and minimizes the risks for the future of children. Steph, I'm going to come to you just in a moment, but it looks like we have Stephen back. Stephen, can you hear us now?
I can. Can you hear me?
So pleased that you're with us now, Stephen.
Okay.
So can I come to you? We've just seen a video clip of the children talking about why it's so important that children are engaged in this area of AI. And I wonder from your perspective, well, perhaps if you could start by telling us a little bit about your role, and then some reflections on the ways that, or to what extent children are engaged with AI in the kind of international context.
Okay, great. I'm really sorry about earlier. Alvin helped to connect me again. So I'm Steve Vosloo. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm sorry that I'm not there in person. Greetings from Cape Town. I'm a digital policy and foresight specialist with UNICEF, and I've led the work that we've done on developing guidance, policy guidance on AI for children. I think, if I get the question correctly, the children were asking about whether people's feelings, or in this context, children's feelings, were being reflected in AI and AI development. And in our analysis so far, it really has not. We've looked at a whole lot of national AI strategies and policies, and even kind of ethical guidelines. And at best, they're human-centered.
Keeping my fingers crossed here.
The difference, right? There are additional protections you need. Yeah, there are additional protections you need, but also there are additional opportunities. And so we have not seen that reflected. We see great examples like, from the videos we've just seen, engaging children in Scotland, and we in our project engaged young people internationally, adolescents in 5 countries. And it was...
We'll give it a moment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but unfortunately it's not, we are not seeing enough engagement of young people on the international stage when it comes to AI, even though they are at the forefront of AI usage. And it's impacting their lives today.
Okay, so I think we have lost the audio again. We will keep trying. We will keep trying to bring Stephen back into this conversation, and one way or another we will manage. Oh, Stephen, you are with us now, I think. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
We keep cutting out. Perhaps we'll move on. And we'll try and come back. We will come back again, and we'll see if we have a better connection. But Steph, I wonder if I could come to you. We heard in the video the children talking about the importance of engaging children, and obviously this is a collaboration between Scottish AI Alliance, Children's Parliament, and Alan Turing Institute. And I wonder if you could say a little bit about how this work engaging the children is feeding into the work of Scottish AI Strategy or Scottish AI Alliance, or where we hope this to go in terms of the impact it will achieve.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, the vision outlined in Scotland's AI strategy is around Scotland being a leader in trustworthy, ethical and inclusive AI. And when we mean inclusive, children are part of that. The strategy committed to adopting UNICEF's policy guidance on children and AI. And right now, the way the project has kind of been designed is that the first phase was about exploring children's rights in AI. And then the second phase was about how we can explore putting the topics that they're interested in into exploring how that can actually be operationalized. How can we actually get children to input into projects? So I'm sure Gregory will be able to talk further because he's at the forefront of the delivery, but we've been working on big missions with the children as well as mini missions, but these big missions, we looked for organizational partners who are actually actively either developing a product or a project or a policy where the children could actually have meaningful influence on. And then our third phase is how do we then create a legacy for this engagement? We don't want this to be done, it's all right, we spoke to the children, it's all good now. But essentially we want to ensure that we create a mechanism that children can be engaged with on a regular basis and provide guidance to organizations and projects and research on how to actually do that properly and meaningfully. And this extends, if you take a step back, this extends to engagement with people as a whole, not just children. That public engagement, societal engagement, civil society engagement, a lot of this is viewed as tick box exercises. And ultimately, it needs to be meaningful engagement. And how do we engage properly and actually provide a mechanism where what we called it in the team is closing the loop. So it's not just about us preaching what AI is to people. It's about how we then actively listen, and take their feedback and impact how we do things. And that's something we're committed to over the next 2 years, to create this a suite of mechanisms actually for how people can input into how Scotland creates its own AI future. And the Children's Parliament and ATI, the project, is part of that.
That's brilliant. And I think that's a really important point to emphasize in this work, that it's not just engaging the children to find out how they feel or to teach children about AI, but it's to develop ways to meaningfully involve children in shaping the future of AI. And we really hope that this will be a kind of exemplar best practice that can then be replicated in other regions and other contexts and rolled out. Gregory, wonder if you could say a bit more about what's been happening in phase 2 and some of the ways that this work is leading into impact and informing decision making.
Yeah, absolutely. So in each of the 4 schools we work with, we've divided it up by theme. So the 4 themes that came out of the first phase, and these were identified by the children as areas that were significant for children's rights and AI, were fairness and bias, safety and security, learning about AI, and AI in education. So you can see that that's already kind of formed the structure of this panel a little bit as well. To give one example, and then each of those, we have gone in schools and run 2 days of workshops. The first day of workshops was working with somebody working with AI or in AI, as Steph was talking about then. And then the second day was working with an artist or a creative practitioner on a day-long workshop, creating some kind of artwork that was allowed the children to reflect and to express their thoughts and ideas about the discussions they'd had the day before, and we'll actually be exhibiting those artworks at the Scottish AI Summit next week alongside the children's plenary session. To go into a little bit of depth about one of them, so in Doon, in a village of Stirlingshire, we worked with the NHS, with the West of Scotland Innovation Hub, which is a collaboration between the NHS Glasgow, Greater Glasgow and Clyde, and the University of Glasgow. And what they have been working on is they're in the early stages of developing an AI system that will be able to use videos of children to diagnose types of seizure. What they wanted to find out was kind of how the children felt about certain privacy concerns, that kind of area. So this was under the blanket of safety and security. No, it wasn't. It was under the blanket of fairness and bias. I'm forgetting things. And we were interested in the children's feelings in regard to this. So we brought the academics and the doctors from that project into the classroom in Stirling, and we facilitated a day of workshops that was around initially giving the children a bit of a sense of what these people do and what they want to find out, and then facilitating the children feeding back and children will feed back, and they will feed back very openly and honestly. And the takeaway from that was that these researchers have already tweaked their plans. The children were much more concerned than they had thought about questions about their videos being used in a data set. So they've gone back and say, okay, how are we going to further anonymize this? Are we going to strip it back to kind of skeleton frames of the movements themselves rather than including the raw footage? So it's already, as we're going on, having those impacts. But also, I think we had a feedback session with the doctors and the researchers, and that was so valuable to us to see the importance of the work, because these are paediatricians who already work with children, and they already have mechanisms in their workplace for consulting with children. But what they came away was an understanding that the mechanisms that they have are not very in-depth, and that actually, in order to genuinely find out what children think, you firstly need to go to where the children are. You need to go into schools, you need to go into those kind of environments, and also the environments where they feel comfortable, and they will share, and they feel comfortable to kind of share what they genuinely think. I think there's a lot of spaces where children come in and they will tell you what they think adults want them to say, because they are adult-led environments. But also just spending that length of time and getting comfortable with the children, there's a richness to that which is lacking in other kind of ways of consulting, I think.
Amazing. And I know certainly from through this collaboration, I've learned a huge amount about how to have those conversations, how to engage with children, and from working with Children's Parliament, seeing the creative approaches that you use, and actually a lot of this, when we're talking about AI and we're talking about technologies, but a lot of what you're actually doing in the classroom is with plasticine and crayons and painting and arts and crafts, and that's, I think, those kind of really creative approaches, which is something that's literally getting down on your hands and knees to engage children in a way which is meaningful and relevant to them. I mean, all too often these engagement approaches maybe come from an adult's perspective of what we want to know or what we care about or how we're going to ask that. And actually what it's just shown is that we really need to do some things fundamentally differently to make this relevant and accessible to children.
Yeah, I think for a project about technology, we've used remarkably little technology in the delivery of it. Yeah, paper and pens works really well.
Yeah. Sian, can I come to you? And from a kind of a DFE, a Department for Education perspective, what do you see as perhaps the future role of engaging children or ways of incorporating children's views, children's feelings into thinking about the future of AI in education?
I think it's really, really important because the technology exists already, but it's only going to develop and change and grow, and we really need to have children's voices at the centre of thinking about, from the kind of bottom of the tech stack all the way up to the engagement that they're having in the classroom, what their place is in that dynamic. We've done some really early deliberative work looking at children's views around their content, the kind of work that they do being used to train AI models and how they feel about that, which we'll report later in the spring, so I can't give you too much detail about what we've heard there, but there are some really, really interesting views from children about what they feel is theirs and what they want to protect and what they're happy to share for the greater good. I think that children have a good sense of democracy and how they can contribute to a good future, but we do really need to take their voice right into the centre. It's something that our ministers are also really committed to doing and are keen to bring a children's voice into how we think about what teaching and learning looks like, to make sure that those experiences are really rich and valuable, and the interactions in the classroom are helping children to grow both from a kind of knowledge and skills perspective, but also from a kind of community and well-being perspective too. So yeah, I think there's loads of work to do, and the more we can have kids involved in those conversations, the better our policy is going to be.
Yeah, no, that's really positive. I wonder if we could bring up the Slido code so we can have our Slido questions. And we can also have questions from the floor. Should get the Slido. Oh. Well, perhaps we can bring the Slido's code onto the stage, onto the screen. Yeah, okay, so there's a QR code here to submit questions onto Slido. But if there are any questions from the floor, please just raise your hand, and we have a roving mic that will come around to for any questions from the floor. Do we have any questions? Yeah, over here. Do we have a mic?
Thank you for the wonderful discussion. So my question is whether you think that children using AI more and more might affect computer literacy. And to elaborate a little bit is, I think I read an interesting study where the assumption was that children that grew up with computers and tablets and mobile phones were going to be more knowledgeable about computers in general, and then generations that started interacting with computers that when they were 10 plus years old. But it ended up being the case that due to tablets having all the apps readily available, children did not know that you could click on a folder and then click on another folder. So that tree structure wasn't known. So do we think that potentially AI making things even more readily available might contribute to that lack of technical computer literacy?
That's a really interesting question. So what do you think about the impact of availability of AI technologies on digital literacy and technical literacy? Who would like to go first?
I can jump in if you want. So I'm not an expert in the computing curriculum. I spend a lot of my time thinking about access to technology and how we optimize technology to make it work well for young people. But I think that all of our shared experience is that the user interface is not the same as the technology that sits underneath that user interface. And there's a clear incentive for the UK to remain at the forefront of development of future technology and to be doing that in an ethical and safe way. So I think it is really important that we are building the foundational knowledge about how computers work, how algorithms work, that sits underneath that user experience. I see that as something slightly separate to, I don't know, like I personally am not an expert in how a word processor works. I can use a word processor and I can do some stuff on word processors that other people can't do. That's like IT teaching. And then there's digital literacy, and then you've got the stuff that you need in computing to develop like the future of how these technologies are going to roll out. And I think all three of those things are important in giving children and young people the skills that they need for the future. The Department for Science, Innovation and Skills have recently published their frameworks around AI literacy in the population, and not everybody is going to need to be developing the AIs of the future, but we're all going to need to understand what it is that we're engaging with and how we do so safely. So I think there's something really important about kids being aware of where their data is going and making effective decisions about what they want to happen with their information. That's got to be like critical baseline level, right? But you're going to need different interventions as people kind of go up through that chain of using and developing technologies that have different levels of AI within them, from a kind of user to a very, very technical perspective. Does that start to answer the question?
Do you want to come?
Yeah, no, I think your question also feeds into a wider discussion around the dangers of de-skilling people with more and more reliance on AI tools, and specifically with children. I've been party to conversations around, people won't need to code anymore or stuff. You got a Copilot, and stuff like that. But I just would be wary against, creating a generation of children and people, who they will grow up into adults that blindly accept that what a machine tells them is correct. And this is where foundational knowledge around understanding how these systems work and what they do, is so crucial, because critical thinking, analytical skills, problem skills, so that even in a workplace that someone says, do me the quarterly sales report, from a data set, and they look at it, and they can make a decision, is this right, before presenting it to their board. We've seen use cases, especially around the use of ChatGPT, where people blindly accept what it is and submit it. Like, for example, the lawyer last year who got into trouble because he made a plea for his case using a made-up case from, ChatGPT. So I think it's it's a balance we have to get to encourage children to fully embrace the technologies, but at the same time ensuring that they understand what is the underlying mechanisms that enables technologies. So, and it's not just children, it is adults. When ChatGPT came out, people talked about it as if it's magic, because on the surface it does seem like magic, but if you then dig down and understand what it actually is, that it literally is just, from a mass data set predicting what the next word is based on the proximity of words from the data set, then people will hopefully take it with a pinch of salt, kind of thing, and use it as a tool as opposed to a source of truth, which is what was a big issue around, ChatGPT at the beginning. People looking at it as a source of truth when it wasn't at all.
Absolutely. There's a great question here on the Slido. I'm going to come to you first, Gregory, on this one, which is, what do you wish we taught today's adults when they were children that would make it easier for society to use AI responsibly?
Sorry, say that again.
So what do you wish we taught today's adults when they were children that would make it easier for society to use AI responsibly?
Oh,
like if you could have a time machine and go back 20 or 30 years, what would people need to have known to make today's AI more responsible?
I mean, perhaps predictably, I'm going to talk about children's rights, because I don't remember being taught in school about children's rights. I don't remember being taught that I had power to advocate for myself, and that also there were adults around me whose responsibility it was to act on that. And that's a really important distinction as well. If we're talking about children's rights and talking about children in these kind of spaces, it's our responsibility, firstly, to listen to them, secondly, to take what they say seriously, act on what they say, or if it's not possible to act on what they say, and it sometimes isn't, explain that rationale to them. And from that, so I've lost my train of thought. So what the question was about...
if you had a time machine to go back and teach today's adults, so 20, 30 years ago when they were children, what would you want them to be taught?
So I think that then breeds a generation of adults who are better able to critically think about systems around them. And obviously, tech is a big part of that. It's something that we all grapple with as adults, the kind of power that big tech companies have to kind of steer our daily lives. And if you equip children to think like that, if you equip adults to think critically about that, then we have a much better chance kind of democratically as a society to make those decisions for ourselves rather than leaving that in the hands of what's essentially sort of profit-driven ideas.
Sian, can I ask you that question as well? What do you wish that the adults of today had been taught when they were children?
Yeah, such a good question. There's so many facets to this problem, right? I would start with thinking about the things that I think about every day is how we give teachers their Sunday nights back and how we help people do a great job in the classroom for our young people. And I think that if I could go back in a time machine, I would make sure that everybody had like a healthy love for technology and was inquisitive about it and had the knowledge and skills to be able to have a play and to not have fear and to learn and to read. I think we have a problem in England that not every school yet has a high-speed broadband connection, which we're working really hard to fix. And we don't have Wi-Fi in all of our classrooms, but also our teachers aren't all experts in this technology. A lot of them don't have the confidence to have a go with ChatGPT, and they're fearful, some of them, that, great, I can use it to do my marking, but is it right for me to be putting all of these kids' essays into where is that going? What is happening to it? So I would love to do some stuff around basic digital literacy. If we could go back 10, 15, 20 years to give the generation that is now teaching our children the true confidence that, you can explore and that you know the questions that you should be asking yourself to make it safe. I think we're playing a bit of catch up on that now, but I'm excited to be doing that with people who are currently in teaching jobs and will be teaching them, the teachers of the future.
Yeah, absolutely, that's so important. Do we have any other questions in the room? if not, we have here on Slido. So the use of technology, including phones and social media, etc., at an early age impacts children's mental health. So how can we react faster to the AI developments to protect them? Who would like to have a first go at answering that? How can we ensure that we have the safeguards or protections in place to protect children from the harms of social media and digital technologies?
Maybe linked to the previous question, if we could go back in a time machine to the adults today that developed these technologies, is to have them understand the importance of empathy, and that anonymity on platforms isn't cool, and that can have serious, real life harm on people, because one of the biggest harms of social media is that ability to hide behind an anonymous facade and say whatever you think, and think nothing of it, because you are distanced from that. And yeah, I mean, what can we do, to help? Oh, the question's disappeared. It was about mental health, wasn't it? Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know if any of you were in the previous session about Imagine Futures, where I said, there was a reckoning when social media essentially was dismantled because of the mental health crisis it caused. The more people understand that these tools are designed to make you addicted to them, the more people, I hope, will be able to step back or perhaps make an informed decision about it and be able to help kids, children and young people with that addiction, to actually, it's not their fault that they're staring at a screen all day. It is designed that way. And to kind of, shift that narrative perhaps to see how we can tackle that instead of blaming, children for not wanting to go out and play because they have been put in front of a bit of technology that is designed to keep them there. So I think and involving children in those decisions is really, really important.
And further to that as well, I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that these programs, these social media platforms, were not designed with children in mind, but children are using them. We know they're using them. We know children on Snapchat. We know they're on Instagram. We know they're on all of these platforms. But the companies producing them are getting around that by saying, oh, well, you have to be 13 plus, so therefore we don't need to think about children's rights. Ignoring the fact that children are using them. So it's a very kind of convenient way to ignore responsibility there. And that needs to be kind of built into legislation, I think.
I think I recently read that 13-year-old limit is an arbitrary number that was decided based on data transfer laws or something, that they just chose 13 because I think anything younger, they are subject to more regulations around how data can be transferred. And you're like, wow, that's where they plucked 13 from, not because of any particular research around, maturity, resilience, etc., to using that kind of technology. So, but yeah, that's just a random thing I discovered and was like, wow.
We have loads of questions coming in now, and I realize I'm getting signaled we're out of time. I wanted to end with asking us for a takeaway message, but I'm going to come back to Stephen one final time to see, Stephen, if you can see and hear us, if you would like to close our session with a takeaway message of what you would like the audience to know or to think about in terms of children's rights and children's engagement on AI.
Okay. Can you hear me? Hello? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, and I'm really sorry again. I think my takeaway message would be that involving children in AI policy and AI development is not only their right, but it actually leads to better AI. And they can really help us think about better policies and just
Well, I mean, I think that was a condensed takeaway message, but an important one. Engaging children is definitely, I mean, it is both about protecting children's rights and their right to participation, but also that fundamentally engaging children makes things better. This is about opportunities to see the world through children's eyes and design AI systems that are going to have meaningful, positive impacts and really bring benefits for children. And so I think that approach of viewing this is not just something that we do as a nice thing to do or because it's good to talk to children, but actually we can design AI systems better and we can make AI systems more relevant, more beneficial for children and therefore for everybody, which I think is a wonderful message to end on. Thank you all so much for joining this session. Thank you.